Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Samantha was always a cheerful 16-year-old girl. Every morning, she would wake up to the gentle call of her mother, Caroline. They lived together in a small house on the edge of town. Life seemed peaceful and quiet, but recently, Samantha started noticing something was off. Her mom began to show strange behavior, sometimes engaging in actions that were unexplainable. At first, it was just small things. Caroline would often forget things, which Samantha thought might be because her mom was too busy. "Mom, where are your keys? You left them on the table." Samantha called out from the living room, still glued to her homework. Caroline walked out from the kitchen, looking confused, holding an empty frying pan. "What did you say, Samantha?" "I can't remember where I put the keys," Caroline replied weakly, scanning the room as if trying to find something. Samantha shrugged, not paying too much attention. It didn't seem like a big deal, everyone forgets things sometimes. But then, these small things gradually became more troubling signs that were hard to ignore. First, there were the sleepless nights. Caroline started waking up in the middle of the night, wandering around the house with no clear purpose. Sometimes, Samantha would see her mom standing silently in the kitchen, staring blankly at the fridge as if it held some terrible secret. "Mom, what are you doing?" Samantha asked, her voice filled with concern. Caroline turned around, her eyes dark with circles, her face pale, her gaze sharp but expressionless. "Oh, I was just. I don't know, I must be tired," she replied, her voice wavering, and her hands trembling. But what sent chills down Samantha's spine was the slight smile that spread across her mom's lips right after. A strange, cold smile, completely unlike her mom. Caroline's odd behaviors became harder and harder to explain. One evening, when Samantha got home after her extra classes, she heard water running from the bathroom. It wouldn't have been unusual, except it was past midnight, and her mom never stayed up that late. Samantha slowly climbed the stairs, with the bathroom light spilling out from under the door, creating a dim glow. She knocked gently on the door. "Mom, are you okay? Why are you showering at this hour?" There was no response. Samantha pushed the door open, and the sight before her made her freeze. Caroline was sitting on the bathroom floor, fully dressed, soaked in water from the shower still running over her. Her eyes were fixed on the ceiling, unblinking. Her whole body trembled slightly, but her lips whispered something, small, unintelligible sounds. "Mom! What's wrong?" Samantha rushed over to turn off the shower, cold water splashing on her. She shook her mom, but Caroline said nothing, only continued to stare into the void with a chillingly blank expression. A moment later, Caroline suddenly turned her head, staring directly into Samantha's eyes, her eyes now empty, so distant it made Samantha shiver. "You wouldn't understand, Samantha." "No one does," Caroline whispered, then abruptly stood up, pushing Samantha aside and walking out of the bathroom, leaving her daughter in unspeakable fear. Then came a dark, wintry night. Their small house, where darkness and silence sometimes became oddly frightening. Samantha woke up in the middle of the night to strange noises coming from downstairs. The sound of footsteps, uneven, sometimes like knocking, sometimes like something being dragged across the wooden floor. She frowned, fumbling for her phone on the nightstand. The dim light from the screen lit up Samantha's worried face when she saw it was 2 a.m. She got out of bed, tiptoeing down the stairs. The strange sounds continued, but this time, there was something different. Whispering. Who would be talking at this hour? Samantha wondered. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she stopped. A faint light from her mom's room shone through. She hid behind the door, peeking inside, and immediately felt a chill run down her spine. She saw her mother standing still, staring at a family portrait hanging on the wall. But then suddenly, Caroline turned around, giving a chilling smile, then lifted her eyes and stared directly into Samantha's through the crack in the door. Why aren't you asleep yet? Caroline asked coldly. Samantha's skin crawled, but she tried to stay calm, answering. I just got up to get some water, Mom. Are you okay? Caroline didn't respond right away, just smiled awkwardly and then returned to her bed, lying down without saying anything else. Samantha couldn't take it anymore. She ran straight back to her room and locked the door, and from that moment until morning, she couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed, her mind swirling with questions and images of her mom. Every time she closed her eyes, her mom's dry laugh echoed in her head, making her shudder. The next morning, Samantha got up feeling anxious. She slowly opened her door, holding her breath. Everything seemed normal again. The house was strangely quiet, no more footsteps, no more weird noises. She walked down the stairs and saw her mom sitting at the dining table, just like every other morning. Mom, are you okay? Samantha asked cautiously. Caroline looked up at her daughter, smiling gently. Of course, honey. Why wouldn't I be? Samantha stared at her mom, trying to find any sign of abnormality, but her mom looked eerily normal. Could everything that happened last night have been just a nightmare? She wondered if she had imagined it all. But then night after night, it happened again. Caroline seemed to be sleepwalking, talking to invisible entities in the dark, and sometimes Samantha even caught her doing strange actions in her sleep. Samantha tried to ignore it and went back to her room to sleep, but around 1 a.m., Samantha stirred awake, finding her mom standing right next to her bed, staring at her with eyes devoid of any emotion, making her jump in fright. Mom, are you okay? Samantha asked, feeling fear rise in her chest. Caroline didn't answer, just stood there, then suddenly turned and walked away. Samantha watched her mom's shadowy figure disappear into the darkness, feeling as if something sinister was enveloping their home. Since then, Samantha always felt that something was wrong in her house. Her mom would often mutter nonsense to herself, frequently disappearing for hours without explaining where she went. Once, when Samantha tried to follow her, she saw Caroline standing in front of the mirror, murmuring something, her eyes fixed on her reflection as if she no longer recognized herself. Mom, what's happening to you? Samantha tried to ask, but all she got in return was complete silence. Caroline only silently smiled, her eyes carrying something Samantha couldn't understand. The girl felt as if she was living with a complete stranger. One day, when Samantha returned home after school, the house was empty. There was no sign of Caroline. At first, Samantha thought her mother might have gone shopping or visited a friend, but then she discovered something stranger. The light in her mother's room was still on, the window was wide open, and the wind was blowing the curtains wildly. Scattered across the table were papers with images, messy notes about things Samantha had never seen her mother be interested in before, drawings of strange symbols, writings that looked like an ancient language, and black and white photos of unfamiliar people. What is this? What has Mom been up to? Samantha thought to herself, her heart filling with worry. She picked up a piece of paper, and what she saw sent a chill down her spine, an old photograph of her mother, but the eyes in the picture had been carefully cut out. Samantha's hands trembled as she tried to stay calm, but the fear was overwhelming. She knew she had to do something. Samantha went to her bedroom, took out her phone, and tried calling some relatives, but no one picked up. After hours of waiting, the clock struck close to midnight, and suddenly the front door creaked open. Samantha rushed out of her room to see Caroline walking in, her eyes coldly staring straight at her. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice shaking. Caroline didn't respond immediately. She walked closer to Samantha, her lips curling into a mysterious smile. "You'll soon find out, Samantha. You'll understand everything." Samantha stepped back, feeling a wave of unease wash over her. She felt like everything around her was spiraling into a dark, mysterious void, and the most terrifying thing was that her mother was standing right in the middle of it. The following afternoon, when Samantha got home from school, she heard loud banging noises coming from her mother's room. She rushed upstairs, her heart pounding. The door was slightly ajar, but there was a strange light coming from inside. Samantha slowly opened the door and witnessed a horrifying scene. Caroline was standing in the middle of the room, holding a small mirror, but instead of looking into it, she was repeatedly smashing it against her head. Shards of glass flew everywhere, tiny pieces embedding into her skin, blood trickling down her forehead, but she didn't stop. "Mom!" Samantha screamed, running over to grab her hand. Caroline stopped, but this time, her face had completely changed. Her eyes were wide, her lips twisted into a bizarre smile. "You'll be there soon too, Samantha. You'll see." Samantha felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She stepped back, horrified at the sight of her mother. Caroline dropped the mirror onto the floor and began walking slowly toward her. "Everything will end, but before that, we have to prepare," she said, her voice echoing as if from a far-off place. "Mom, you need to rest. You're hurt." Samantha tried to speak as calmly as she could, but her mind was in turmoil. Caroline stopped, her eyes growing unfocused. She collapsed to the ground, her hands trembling as she clutched her head. "What's happening to me, Samantha? I can't control myself anymore," she gasped, her eyes filled with confusion. Samantha stood there, not knowing what to do. She could only hold her mother, feeling her shaking as the fear passed through her body. She knew her mom was scared, but she couldn't understand what was really going on. The next morning, Samantha decided she needed to have a serious talk with her mom. As they sat down for breakfast, Samantha spoke up. "Mom, I think we need to see a doctor." Caroline gave a light smile, a tired smile. "A doctor? I'm fine, sweetheart. Maybe I've just been a little stressed lately." "No, Mom," Samantha replied, her voice firmer than usual. "I'm really worried about you. You've changed so much. You can't just say you're fine when it's clear you're not the same as before." Caroline looked at her daughter in silence, her eyes empty. After a moment, she nodded. "If that's what you think, I'll go." The bus rumbled down the road toward the hospital. Samantha sat next to her mom, her heart filled with worry. Could something really be wrong? If not physical, then maybe mental. These thoughts kept swirling around in her head all the way there. They arrived at the hospital around noon. The door to the clinic opened, and they walked into the cold, sterile waiting room, where the air conditioner hummed softly. Samantha held her mother's hand tightly, her mind a tangled mess. The doctor was a middle-aged man, with sharp eyes and a deep, calming voice. He invited them to sit down in front of his desk and opened his medical journal. After listening to Samantha explain the signs Caroline had been showing, the doctor frowned. "Mrs. Caroline, I need to run some tests. Don't worry too much, but I want to make sure we're not overlooking anything." Caroline smiled softly, but Samantha could see the worry hidden deep in her eyes. "I'm fine, doctor. It's probably just my age catching up to me." After nearly 2 hours of tests, the doctor returned with a stack of results. Samantha sat on the edge of her seat, the tension in her chest rising. She swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the doctor's every move. "Is there something serious? Please, don't let it be bad," she thought to herself. "Mrs. Caroline," the doctor began, his tone serious but not overly grave. "Your health is perfectly fine. There are no abnormal findings in the tests." Samantha looked at her mother, her eyes wide with confusion. How could that be? She almost blurted out but managed to keep calm. Caroline let out a sigh of relief, but her smile still carried a hint of unease. "See, Samantha. I'm okay." Samantha couldn't accept it. "No, it's not right," she almost shouted. "You're not the same anymore, Mom. The things you say, the things you do, it can't just be regular stress." The doctor looked at her with sympathy. Samantha, I understand you're worried, but sometimes, changes in behavior in adults aren't always linked to illness. It could be mental pressure, old memories resurfacing that adults tend to revisit. But Mom isn't that old yet, Samantha snapped, feeling like someone was hiding something. Is everything really okay, like you said? The doctor was silent for a moment, then calmly said. Samantha, sometimes when we're too concerned about someone, we easily pick up on even the smallest signs and interpret them in the worst possible way. It could be that your mother is just going through a difficult mental phase. Therapy could help a lot. On the way back home, Samantha felt like everything was crashing down around her. No illness, no serious health issues, so why was her mother acting this way? Is there something I don't know? She wondered, still gripping her mother's hand tightly. Mom, I'm still not at ease. I don't understand what's happening to you. I'm really scared that you're hiding something. Caroline sighed, her eyes staring blankly out the bus window. Samantha, you're still young, you can't understand everything I've been through. Sometimes, memories come back and trap a person inside them. Is it because of Dad? Because of what happened to Dad? Samantha asked, though she hesitated. Memories of her father were still an open wound in their family. I don't know, Samantha. I really don't know. She knew her mom missed her dad, but he had been gone for over 5 years. The pain seemed to have lessened somewhat, but now, those memories were weighing heavily on Caroline's mind again. Or was there something else that Samantha didn't know? That night, when the two of them returned home, Samantha couldn't shake off her worry. She couldn't just sit back and watch her mother become more distant and strange like this. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find a clear reason. Everything seemed vague, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Mom, I love you so much. I don't want anything to happen to you ever again. Samantha said, her eyes filled with tears as she looked at her mom. Caroline hugged her daughter tightly, her hands trembling. I know, sweetie. I don't want that either. Samantha understood that no matter what, she would not let her mother face this alone. She would stay by her side, find out what was going on, and protect her from whatever was slowly eating away at her mind. She knew this battle had only just begun. The two of them drifted off to sleep, but in the middle of the night, Samantha woke up with a start. The room was cloaked in thick darkness, with only the moonlight seeping through the window, softly illuminating her rosy cheeks. Samantha lay still for a moment, listening to the steady breathing of her mother, Caroline, who was lying next to her. The night was quiet, only the sound of crickets chirping outside the garden broke the silence. Samantha had just managed to get some rest after a long, exhausting day at the hospital, but she felt something was off in this stillness. She slowly propped herself up, glancing over at her mom. Caroline was asleep, but there was something strange about the way she lay. Her hands were not resting neatly under the thin blanket as usual, instead, they were moving slowly. Samantha watched as her mother gradually sat up, her eyes wide open but blank, like someone under a trance. Samantha held her breath, her heart beating faster than usual. Another strange behavior from her mom. Caroline slowly got out of bed, her bare feet softly touching the floor. Samantha didn't dare move, just watched her mom's every step in the dim light. She walked over to the corner of the room, where there was a small table with a lamp and a few books. She opened a drawer and took out a notebook and a pen. Samantha's eyes widened in surprise. What was her mom doing now? Something wasn't right. Her mom didn't look around, didn't even seem to notice Samantha's presence. She opened the notebook and began writing, her hand gliding quickly across the page with a slanted script. Samantha tiptoed closer to get a better look at what her mom was doing. As she peered at the open notebook, Samantha was shocked to see the strange words her mother was writing. They weren't drawings or weird symbols, or ancient-like text like before. Instead, her mom was writing the names of various plants that Samantha had only heard of a few times in her everyday life. There was something very odd about the way she was writing. It was as if it wasn't Caroline controlling her hand but an invisible force guiding her. Each line of text seemed to be written with a peculiar rhythm. "Mom," Samantha whispered, her voice trembling. There was no response. Caroline continued writing, her eyes still blank. Samantha called out again, this time more forcefully. "Mom, what are you doing?" But there was still no reply. Caroline remained silent, writing as if she were possessed by something unseen. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine. She stood there, quietly observing for a long time, trying to find a logical explanation for her mom's bizarre behavior. But then curiosity and concern took over. She couldn't just stand there any longer. She moved closer, her hand trembling as she gently touched her mom's shoulder. "Mom, wake up." Caroline jolted, as if she had just been snapped out of a deep trance. She looked up, her eyes dazed, as if she had no idea where she was. Samantha could see the confusion in her mom's eyes. She gently shook her once more. "Are you okay? What were you doing?" Samantha asked, her voice filled with concern. Caroline frowned, her eyes gradually regaining clarity. She looked down at the notebook, then turned to Samantha with a bewildered expression. I had a strange dream, a very vivid one," she said, her voice hoarse as if she had just been through something terrifying. "A dream? But you weren't just dreaming, Mom. You actually got up and wrote in this notebook. You were writing down names of plants and strange formulas." Samantha replied, pointing to the notebook still open on the table. Caroline looked down, and for the first time, she seemed to notice what she had written. "Oh my God," Caroline sighed, her hands trembling as she ran them through her hair. "You're right. These are herbal formulas. How could I have written these?" Samantha shook her head, her eyes full of doubt. "You were writing for several minutes, as if someone was guiding you. Didn't you realize?" Caroline took a deep breath, then slowly began to explain. "In my dream, I met an old man, a man with long, snow-white hair, and a beard just as white and long. He led me into a forest, a dense forest with tall ancient trees. He said I was his student a long time ago, but I don't remember any of it." "Who was he? And why did he take you into the forest?" Samantha asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Caroline looked down at her trembling hands. "He said I used to learn how to use plants to make medicine, how to create herbal remedies from things in the forest. He taught me how to identify each leaf, each branch, and he said I had to remember those formulas. Every night, he would bring me back to that forest to continue learning." "But you don't know anything about herbal medicine. How could you know these formulas?" Samantha asked, trying to make sense of what her mom was saying. Caroline shook her head, her eyes staring into the distance, her voice filled with fear and confusion. "I don't know, Samantha. I don't understand how this is happening. But the dream felt so real, like I was actually in that forest, like the old man was really guiding me step by step." Samantha watched her mother, her worry growing with every passing second. "You think it was just a dream, but then why did you wake up and write all of this?" Caroline looked at her daughter, then slowly shook her head. "No, Samantha. It wasn't just a simple dream. I felt, it was too real. These formulas, I've never seen them before, but I know them as if I learned them a long time ago." Samantha was silent, unsure of what to say. She sat down beside her mother, looking at the notebook filled with the strange handwriting and thinking about the bizarre story of the old man her mom had just told. Why was her mom dreaming about him? And what was it that made her get up and write these odd formulas? Caroline looked at Samantha, her eyes filled with worry. "I think we need to find out more about these dreams. Maybe there's something I've forgotten from the past. We can't just ignore this." Samantha nodded slightly. "But first, you should rest. I think we need to figure out the cause no matter what." You can't keep going on like this. Caroline gave a weary smile, her eyes tired. You're right. But we won't stop until we know the truth about these dreams. Something is happening, and I believe it's not just a coincidence. The story about the old man in Caroline's dream and the mystery of the herbal formulas made Samantha feel like she was stepping into a suspenseful journey. She didn't know what awaited her and her mom, but she could clearly sense an invisible force was drawing them into an adventure like never before. That morning's class went on as usual, but Samantha's mind wasn't on the lessons or the numbers on the board. She kept glancing at Lucy, her best friend, who was sitting 2 desks away, trying to find a chance to tell her everything that had been happening. When the bell for recess rang, Samantha quickly gathered her books and rushed out the door, where Lucy was waiting. She pulled Lucy to a quiet corner. Samantha, what's going on? You look really worried, Lucy asked, her voice filled with concern. Samantha took a deep breath, trying to stay calm before saying the things she had been keeping inside for so long. Lucy, I don't know where to start, but I need to tell you something. Can you come to my house tonight? Samantha said, looking straight into Lucy's eyes, hoping to find some understanding. Don't scare me. Did something happen at home? Lucy asked, her face starting to tense up. Samantha looked down, then slowly began to explain, her voice low but clear. My mom, she's been acting really strange lately. I don't know how to explain it, but she's not like she used to be. It's like she's going crazy. But when I took her to see a doctor, they said she's completely fine. Lucy's eyes widened, not quite believing what she was hearing. What do you mean, crazy? But if the doctor said she's okay, maybe you're just worrying too much. No, it's not that. Samantha interrupted, her voice starting to shake. She talks to herself, laughs creepily in the middle of the night, sometimes she stands in front of the mirror for hours, just staring at her reflection. And last night she suddenly said she met an old man in her dream, a man with long, snow-white hair and a long white beard. He taught her how to make herbal medicines. You're joking, right? Lucy gasped, her hands clenching together tightly. Samantha shook her head, her eyes beginning to water. I'm not joking, Lucy. I'm really scared. I don't know what's happening to my mom anymore. You have to come to my house tonight. You have to see it with your own eyes. You're the only one who can understand me right now. Lucy hesitated for a moment but then nodded. All right. I'll come. But you have to promise me nothing bad will happen tonight, okay? Samantha gave a weak smile, but she didn't feel any relief inside. I hope so too. That night, Lucy arrived at Samantha's house right on time as they had planned. The house looked normal, just like any other day, but something about it made Lucy feel uneasy the moment she stepped inside. Everything seemed unnaturally quiet. Where's your mom? Lucy asked as they walked into the living room. She's in her room. She locked the door when I got home and hasn't come out since, Samantha replied, her voice hoarse. Wait here for a bit. I'll try to see if she'll talk. Samantha quietly walked up to her mom's bedroom door, listening to the faint sounds coming from inside. There were murmurs mixed with intermittent laughter, making her shiver. She knocked on the door. Mom, are you okay? Samantha asked, her voice soft but loud enough to carry inside. There was no response. She knocked again, harder this time. Mom, can you hear me? This time, there was a creaking sound, like someone moving inside the room, then the door opened just a crack. Caroline appeared, her eyes empty, her lips curled into a twisted smile. Why are you near my room at this hour? She asked, her voice a whisper that sent chills down Samantha and Lucy's spines. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Samantha asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Her mother didn't respond right away. She just stared at her for a long moment, then suddenly turned around and slammed the door shut without saying another word. Lucy stood at the end of the hallway, her eyes wide in disbelief at what she had just witnessed. "Did you see that?" Samantha said, her voice filled with worry. "She's always like this, and it's getting worse." "What are we going to do now?" Lucy stammered. Samantha bit her lip, thinking for a moment before pulling Lucy into her room. "We're staying here tonight. I don't know if anything else will happen, but I can't let you go home alone." Lucy sat down on the bed, fear creeping over her. "What do you think your mom is going to do?" "I don't know," Samantha said, her voice trailing off into the darkness. "But I have a feeling tonight is going to be a long one." Time passed, and Lucy sat huddled in the room, too scared to step outside while Samantha kept pacing back and forth, peeking out toward her mother's room. The wind howled outside the window, mingling with the strange noises coming from Caroline's room. At times, Samantha could hear mumbling, soft laughter, and then sudden silence, as if someone was watching the two girls from afar. Lucy turned to Samantha, whispering, "Do you think your mom is really not okay?" Samantha closed her eyes, a sense of helplessness washing over her. "I don't know, Lucy. But if she keeps going on like this, I'm afraid one day she'll do something we can't undo." The two of them sat in silence, the tension stretching out in the air. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from her mom's room, making both of them jump. "Samantha! Did you hear that?" Lucy yelled, her voice trembling. Samantha didn't reply, she just bolted out of the room, running straight to her mother's room. The door was wide open, and inside it was pitch black, like a dark void. She stepped inside, Lucy following close behind. "Mom! Where are you?" Samantha shouted, her voice filled with panic. There was no answer. The room was empty, with no sign of her mom. Samantha turned to Lucy, her face pale as a ghost. "Lucy, my mom has disappeared." Suddenly, they both heard a strange noise coming from downstairs. The clattering sound echoed from the kitchen, loud and clear in the stillness of the night. Lucy held her breath, clutching the edge of her blanket. "Did you hear that, Samantha?" Her voice trembled. The two girls tiptoed down the stairs, each step as light as possible, as if afraid the slightest sound might provoke something unexplainable. The noises from the kitchen grew louder, sounding like knives cutting against a chopping board and spoons clinking against bowls. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. "Maybe your mom's cooking, but why would she be making food at this hour?" Samantha shook her head. "I don't know. But last time I saw her, she was talking to someone, even though no one was there." As they approached the kitchen door, the scene before them made Lucy want to scream, but Samantha quickly covered her friend's mouth. Samantha's mother, Caroline, stood in the brightly lit kitchen. Her eyes were vacant, and her hands moved deftly, dividing food onto small plates and arranging them neatly on the table. "Children, I'm finished. Come here and eat, you must be so hungry," Caroline said, her voice gentle but rushed, as if she was worried about invisible children in front of her. "Oh my God, what is she doing?" Lucy whispered to Samantha, her eyes wide, her breath quick with fear. "I don't see anyone. Is your mom, is she seeing something we can't?" Samantha tried to stay calm, but deep down, she was just as scared. "I don't know, but this has happened many times. She says there are more than 20 children in the house, but I can't see any of them." Lucy began to back away, wanting to escape the eerie kitchen, but Samantha grabbed her hand, her eyes filled with determination. "No, don't run away, Lucy. I need to help my mom." Caroline continued her task, carefully dividing the food onto each plate. She looked around the table, as if checking on invisible children, and spoke softly. "Don't worry, I'm here. I'll take care of you, you won't be hungry anymore." Lucy felt her entire body shake, her heart pounding against her chest. She tried to keep her voice steady as she said, "Samantha, we need to do something. This isn't normal." Samantha sighed, but there was no surprise in her expression. I've tried talking to her so many times. She believes there are children out there, somewhere, who were abandoned, and they come to her for help. She always sees them, but only she does. Lucy looked at her friend with a mix of confusion and disbelief. You're used to this. Aren't you scared? Samantha looked at her mother for a long moment, then answered, her voice low. I used to be very scared. But I can't abandon my mom. The medical tests showed she's not insane, Lucy. I have to find out what's really going on. Suddenly, Caroline turned around, her eyes red and cloudy, as if shrouded by a mysterious mist. She looked straight at Samantha, as if finally noticing her daughter's presence. Samantha, don't you see? My children, they're hungry. They've suffered long enough. I have to help them. Samantha stepped forward, her voice full of emotion. Mom, there's no one here. Please, Mom, look at me. But Caroline just shook her head, her eyes lost in another world. You don't understand, Samantha. They're everywhere. I can't let them starve. I have to take care of them. Lucy couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed Samantha's hand, pulling her back. Samantha, we can't stay here. Can't you see? She's not herself anymore. We need to call someone for help. Samantha hesitated, but then stepped back with her friend. I know, but I'm scared if I leave her alone, she might do something dangerous. Caroline continued her work, completely oblivious to the two girls. She gently picked up each plate, placing them on the table, and occasionally she seemed to be stroking the invisible hair of the children. Lucy couldn't stop shaking. Are you sure this isn't some kind of spirit or ghost thing? I've never seen anyone like this in my life. Samantha tried to force a light smile, but it quickly faded. I don't believe in ghosts. Lucy took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. But you can't let this keep happening. We have to find a way to help her, Samantha. Maybe, get her to see a therapist. Samantha was silent for a long time, her eyes fixed on her mother, who was lost in the trance of her illusions. She knew Lucy was right. But to do that, she would have to face a painful truth: her mother might never be the same again. Samantha suddenly gripped Lucy's hand tightly, her eyes resolute. All right. I won't abandon my mom. But I also can't let her destroy herself. Tomorrow, we'll seek help. I'll do whatever it takes to bring her back. Lucy looked at Samantha with admiration. I'll be by your side. Whatever you need, we'll do it together. The two girls looked over at Caroline, who was smiling and whispering something to the invisible children. In that moment, Samantha felt a deep sadness wash over her, but she knew she had to be strong. For her mom. And for herself. The journey to finding a solution for Caroline had only just begun, but Samantha was ready to face it. She knew there would be hard days, moments of helplessness, but with Lucy by her side, she no longer had to face this pain alone. The next morning, Samantha woke up feeling anxious. She stood in front of the mirror, convincing herself she was doing the right thing. Lucy had also woken up early, and together they prepared for the important meeting. Everything will be okay, Samantha. I'll be with you. Don't worry, Lucy reassured. As Samantha and Lucy walked down the stairs, Samantha took a deep breath, bracing herself for whatever might happen. But when they reached the kitchen and saw Caroline, the first surprise of the day awaited them. Caroline looked completely normal. She was sitting at the table, drinking coffee, and flipping through a magazine as if nothing unusual had happened. Her face showed no sign of the dazed or weary expression from the previous days. Samantha, would you and Lucy like some breakfast? I just finished making some toast, Caroline said calmly, with no hint of the strange behavior from the days before. Samantha and Lucy looked at each other, unable to believe their eyes. Samantha stepped closer to her mom, hesitantly asking. Mom, are you feeling okay? "Oh, of course, sweetheart," Caroline replied with a smile. "Why wouldn't I be?" Lucy couldn't hide her surprise and leaned in to whisper to Samantha. "Do you find this strange? She's completely different from yesterday." Samantha swallowed hard, feeling a wave of confusion wash over her. Everything seemed too normal, almost suspiciously so. Still, they decided to take Caroline to see the therapist, Dr. Mark Turner. Samantha couldn't ignore her mother's erratic behavior over the past few weeks, and the appointment was already set. On the way to Dr. Turner's clinic, Samantha kept glancing at her mother. Caroline sat quietly in the passenger seat, unnervingly calm and composed. Beside Samantha, Lucy also looked worried. "Do you think she's just pretending? Maybe she knows we're taking her to see a doctor and is trying to act normal," Lucy whispered, her voice tinged with suspicion. "I don't know. Last time I took her to the hospital, it was the same. She was so unstable at night but seemed normal again by morning," Samantha sighed. When they arrived at Dr. Turner's clinic, Samantha couldn't stop thinking about what would happen next. She wanted to believe that everything would become clearer, that Dr. Turner would understand what was happening to her mother. In the consultation room, Caroline sat across from Dr. Turner, a man in his 50s with a calm and patient demeanor. He began the conversation with routine questions. "Hello, Mrs. Caroline, how are you feeling today?" he asked, his gaze gentle but sharp. "I feel perfectly fine, thank you," Caroline answered with a gentle smile. "Nothing out of the ordinary." Samantha sat tensely on her chair, her hands clenched so tightly they were ice cold. She wanted to shout that her mother wasn't fine, that she had been acting strangely for weeks. But now, facing her mother, it was as if none of it had ever happened. Dr. Turner leaned forward, trying to probe deeper. "Have you noticed any psychological changes? Perhaps feelings of anxiety, or trouble sleeping?" Caroline shook her head, still smiling. "No, I really haven't experienced any of those problems. I think my daughter and her friend have just been overly concerned." Lucy couldn't stay quiet any longer. She spoke up. "But, just yesterday, you were acting so different. You couldn't remember anything and were saying things that didn't make sense." "Lucy, maybe you should let Dr. Turner do his job," Samantha said softly, not knowing what was right anymore. Dr. Turner sat quietly for a moment, studying Caroline before turning to Samantha. "Miss Samantha, could you describe the changes you've noticed in your mother in detail?" Samantha nodded and began recounting what she had experienced over the past few weeks, from the times her mother didn't recognize her to when she would mutter incoherent things and behave as if she were being controlled. Samantha's voice trembled as she recalled those terrifying moments, and she could feel her mother's gaze fixed on her. But when Samantha looked back at her, Caroline was gazing at her with a strange, calm affection. "My dear, I don't know why you think that, but I've always been here with you." "Everything is just fine," Caroline said gently, her voice reassuring, as if trying to soothe Samantha. Dr. Turner frowned, clearly sensing that something was off. But every time he tried to probe further, Caroline answered in a completely normal manner, showing no signs of any psychological issues. After more than an hour, Dr. Turner seemed to be out of ideas. He raised his eyebrows, looking at Samantha and Lucy with a hint of helplessness. "I don't see any indication that Mrs. Caroline is experiencing any mental health problems. However, if this continues, you can bring her in for further evaluations." Samantha stood there, feeling numb. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or more anxious. Was her mother truly back to normal, or was this just a facade? "We should go home, Samantha," her mother said, her eyes warm and gentle as they had been for years. But inside, Samantha knew something still wasn't resolved. On the way home, Lucy was silent for a long time before speaking. "What do you think? Is she really okay now?" Samantha didn't answer, staring out the window, the turmoil in her heart still tearing her apart. "I don't know, Lucy. I really don't." Her mind was spinning with 1,000 questions. How could she help her mom? Would her mother ever be the same again? Was there any way to get their lives back to normal? Lucy gently took Samantha's hand, trying to comfort her friend. I know this is hard, but we haven't run out of hope yet. There are other ways, other experts who might be able to help your mom. Don't give up, Samantha. Samantha was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. She knew Lucy was right. Maybe what they needed was a different approach, a new way to better understand Caroline's condition. They both decided to spend more time researching possible psychological disorders Caroline might be facing and to seek help from other organizations and specialists. As time passed, there were indeed signs of improvement with Caroline. One morning, Samantha was startled awake by a commotion downstairs. She turned and saw Lucy, her best friend, still sleeping beside her. Lucy, wake up. Samantha gently shook her friend. Lucy groggily opened her eyes. What's going on, Samantha? It's so early. Listen. There are a lot of people downstairs, something's happening. The two girls quickly got dressed and rushed down the stairs. As they approached the living room, the scene before them left them frozen. Samantha's small house was packed with people. They stood everywhere, from the front yard to the doorstep. Some were sitting on the ground, elderly folks, young men, women, and even children. They were standing close together, murmuring quietly, waiting for something. Mom. Samantha called out loudly when she saw the figure of her mother, Caroline, standing near the door, smiling kindly, talking to an older woman in front of her. Caroline turned around, her eyes showing a hint of exhaustion, but her smile remained. She gestured for Samantha to come closer. You're up already. Did I wake you? She said, her voice gentle but tinged with anxiety. What's going on, Mom? Why are all these people here? Samantha asked, her voice revealing her surprise and a bit of concern. A neighbor, Mrs. Rosa, who was standing nearby, heard Samantha's question and stepped closer. Oh, you didn't know? Your mother, Mrs. Caroline, has been helping a lot of people lately. We all came here to thank her and ask for more medicine. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine. She turned to look at Lucy, whose eyes were also filled with confusion. Thank her and ask for medicine. She healed people? Lucy asked, her voice slightly tense. Yes, an older man nearby spoke up. Mrs. Caroline saved my life. I had severe pneumonia and thought I wouldn't make it, but thanks to her herbal remedy, I recovered miraculously. My mother, too, another woman added. She had chronic joint pain for years, nothing worked. But Mrs. Caroline gave her a herbal treatment, and now my mother can walk without pain. Mom, what is this? How do you know how to heal people? Samantha asked, her questions coming out one after another. Caroline's eyes were calm as she responded. What I know, it comes from the dreams I had, the ones I've told you about. This is unbelievable, Lucy shook her head. You're saying your dreams actually taught you how to heal people? Caroline looked directly into Lucy's eyes. Yes. And now, what I've learned in those dreams is helping many people. Samantha felt her head spinning. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Everything was so strange, so irrational. But then she looked at the joyful faces around her, people who had come not just to ask for more medicine but also to thank her mother. Clearly, something miraculous had happened. So how long have you been doing this? Samantha asked, her voice hoarse. Recently. When you two are at school, I started experimenting with herbal remedies. At first, I just helped those around me, but word spread, and more people began coming to me, Caroline explained. So what now? Samantha looked at the crowd, a part of her feeling proud of her mother, but she couldn't help feeling worried. Are you going to keep doing this? Caroline looked around, her expression growing more serious. I'm not sure, Samantha. But I know one thing, I can't turn away people who need help. A young woman, carrying a small child, stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, Mrs. Caroline, help my child. She's had a high fever for a week, and the doctor said there's no hope." Both Samantha and Lucy exchanged glances, their eyes filled with amazement and concern. Things had suddenly become very serious. Caroline smiled gently, bending down to comfort the young woman. "Don't worry, I will help her." She turned to Samantha and Lucy. "Can you help me? Go inside and get the herbal box from the top shelf." Samantha nodded and quickly went inside the house with Lucy. She couldn't stop thinking about everything she had just heard. A dream guiding her, miraculous herbal remedies, and now her mother was the savior of so many people. "Lucy, can you believe this?" Samantha asked as they opened the cabinet to retrieve the herbal box. "I don't know, but clearly, what your mom is doing is actually helping people." Lucy shook her head. "What do you think about all of this?" "I don't know what to think. But I feel like something big is coming," Samantha sighed. They brought the herbal box outside and handed it to Caroline. She watched as her mother carefully prepared the remedy, her hands moving quickly and precisely, as if she had been doing this her entire life. Finally, Caroline handed a small packet of herbal medicine to the young woman and instructed her on how to use it. The woman took the packet, tears streaming down her face. Thank you so much." Samantha stood there, watching everything unfold in front of her, unsure of what to say. Inside, she felt a mix of amazement, worry, and pride. Her mother's strange dreams weren't just dreams, they had become reality, and now, her mother was a beacon of hope for so many people. "Mom," Samantha said slowly, her tone softer. "If this is really helping others, then I'll support you. I don't know if it's magic or something spiritual, but if it's saving lives, I won't try to ruin it or dig into why you're experiencing this." A relieved smile spread across Caroline's face. "Thank you, Samantha. The only thing I want is to bring peace to people, and I'm so happy to have you by my side." She stood next to her mother, quietly watching as more people continued to arrive. Samantha knew that from today, she would no longer be a passive observer of a quiet, peaceful life but would become a part of the miraculous story unfolding in her small home.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.